Imagine a vast stone castle at night, its corridors almost empty, its great halls quiet after a long day. The air is cool, the torches burn low, and somewhere behind heavy wooden doors, queens are preparing to end their day. And here's the part people don't usually picture. Even a queen surrounded by servants, silk, and stone walls could lie awake in the dark, listening to the castle settle, hearing distant footsteps fade, and wondering if tomorrow would bring comfort, or another long day of being watched, judged, and expected to be perfect. Welcome to History for Sleep. Tonight is a boring history for sleep story. Yes, truly boring on purpose, about the secret lives of medieval queens, not the dramatic bits, not the battlefield speeches, not the shouting men in armor. We're going to stay with the small things. The rustle of fabric, the scratch of a quill on parchment, the soft glow of candles on carved stone. And we'll do it in a slow, calm way, like a long bedtime story for adults, designed to help you rest. You already know what most people say about medieval queens: crowns, weddings, and power, politics, a scandal. But by the end of this adult bedtime story, you'll know something quieter and honestly more human. That their real lives were mostly routine, mostly waiting, mostly managing tiny details over and over again, day after day. So if you came here for soothing, gentle narration and a long sleep story full of calm castle life and sleepy history, you're in the right place. And if you came here because your mind won't stop spinning, because you want insomnia relief, or even a little anxiety relief sleep, then you're also in the right place. Before we begin, you don't need to concentrate on every word. This is boring history to sleep, so it's completely fine if your mind wanders or if you miss parts of the story. It's even fine if you forget everything. I say 3 seconds after I say it. That's not failure. That's success. You can shift your pillow, adjust your blankets, unclench your jaw if you notice it's clenched, and let your body become just a little bit heavier with each breath. And if you fall asleep and don't hear the end, that means the story has done its job. Now, very slowly, we'll arrive not at a battlefield, not at a throne room full of arguments, but at a sleeping castle at night where history is quiet, where royal history becomes ordinary, where medieval women, even queens, are simply people at the end of a long day. We begin outside a large stone castle, standing quietly under a pale, clouded moon. You might imagine the sky as a soft, dark blanket stretched overhead, with the moon behind the thin clouds, making the night feel muted and gentle, not sharp. The air is cool, not painfully cold, just cool enough that you'd pull a cloak closer around your shoulders if you were standing here for long. Somewhere, far away, you hear a sound that could be an owl or could be the wind catching in a tree. And if you listen even more closely, you might notice the castle itself has a kind of silence. Not the silence of nothing, but the silence of something huge and heavy, resting. Stone holds the warmth of the day for a long time, so the walls don't feel dead. They feel like they're slowly breathing out the last heat of sunlight. We walk slowly toward the entrance. No rush, no hurry. The ground underfoot is uneven, and the stones are worn smooth in places, shaped by countless steps across many years. This is one of the strange little facts of medieval history that feels oddly comforting. Time leaves fingerprints everywhere. If you ran your hand along a wall, you might feel where other hands have touched it, again and again, day after day, over and over again. And there's something almost calming about that, because it means your tiredness is not new. People have been tired forever, even queens, even in castles. As we approach the main gate, the castle looks larger, not in an intimidating way, more like a mountain made of stone, with towers that rise up into the night like quiet shapes against the clouded sky. A guard might be nearby, but at this hour even the guard is calm. He's not shouting, he's not dramatic. He's probably half thinking about how warm his bed will feel when his shift ends. We pass through the entrance slowly, a wide wooden door, thick and heavy, its surface worn smooth by many hands. Iron bands cross it like long straps, and the iron looks dark in the dim light, almost soft. Inside the gate there's a courtyard, and the courtyard at night is a different place than the courtyard during the day. During the day there would be carts and servants and horses and noise, but now it's mostly still. You might hear a horse shift its weight in a stable, you might hear a bucket clink somewhere, but mostly you hear your own quiet steps. And then, slowly, we move through another doorway and into the castle itself. The air changes. It becomes less like open night air and more like stone air, cooler, still, a little smoky, as if the scent of fires from earlier is trapped gently in the walls. We step into the great hall, and you might imagine this room as vast, not because it wants to impress you, but because it was built to hold many people. The ceiling is high, the walls are thick, and the sound of your footsteps echoes softly, like a whisper returning to you. Long wooden tables stretch across the hall, but they're mostly empty now. The benches are pushed in. The rushes on the floor, those dry reeds scattered for warmth and comfort, are slightly flattened from the day's footsteps. At the far end, a fire still burns in the hearth, but it's low now. Not a roaring blaze. More like a slow orange glow, like the last bit of a sunset refusing to leave. You can just make out tapestries hanging along the walls. In daylight, they would be bright, but at night, the colors soften. They blur into calm shapes, deep reds, faded gold, muted green, like a painting you're too sleepy to focus on. And the torches burn low. Their flame is small. Their light makes shadows move gently, not sharply. The shadows drift across the stone like slow water. We don't stay in the hall long, we simply notice it. We let it exist quietly. Then we move onward. A corridor stretches ahead, narrower than the hall, but still wide enough for two people to pass. The floor is stone, smooth in the center from years of steps. The walls are cold to the touch, and here the candlelight is softer, small patches of glow under doors. A faint line of warm light where someone forgot to fully close a curtain, and as we walk, we pass doors. One by one, each door is wood, dark and heavy, with iron hinges that look strong enough to last forever. Behind these doors are rooms, sleeping rooms, private rooms, little spaces where people have folded their day away and tried to rest. We do not open them. We do not disturb anyone. This is history at night. This is quiet history. And part of the calm comes from knowing we don't need to do anything. Nothing to fix, nothing to solve, nothing urgent. Everything that needed doing has already been done, and the rest can wait until morning. Now, here is a contrarian thought. People imagine queens as the opposite of ordinary, like they floated above daily life, like they never worried about simple things. But medieval queens lived inside systems made of routine, and routines are boring. And boring is perfect for sleep. A queen might have had jewels, yes, but she also had to sit for hours while her hair was braided. She had to wear layers of clothing that took time to lace and tie. She had to listen to long prayers in a language she might not fully understand. She had to smile when she didn't want to smile, and she had to do it again the next day. So tonight, instead of treating queens like distant statues, we'll treat them like people, and we'll do it gently. In different corners of this castle, several queens and noble women are ending their day. Some are in private chambers where the air smells faintly of candle wax and fabric. Some are in small chapels, kneeling in quiet prayer, the stone cold beneath them. Some are seated at heavy wooden desks, with parchment laid out, ink waiting, and a quill resting like a small sleeping bird. In a few moments, we'll visit them one by one, not to witness great events, but to notice the small, ordinary details of their evenings. And we'll begin with a woman whose name sounds big and dramatic, but whose life, like anyone's, contained long stretches of ordinary hours. We'll begin with Eleanor of Aquitaine. Very slowly, we settle into her quiet chambers, many years into her long life, at a moment when the castle around her is finally growing still. Her rooms are not in the loud heart of the castle. They're farther away, tucked down a corridor where fewer people pass at night. You might imagine the feeling of it, a quieter air, fewer echoes, fewer sudden sounds. The chamber is softly lit by candles. Not many. Just enough. 2 on a table, 1 near a bed, 1 in a wall sconce flickering gently. Candlelight does a strange thing in a stone room. It doesn't fill the space like sunlight. It pools. It gathers in small islands of brightness, leaving the corners dim and quiet. The wax drips down the candles in slow, uneven streams. And if you watched long enough, you'd see the wax form little ridges, like tawny frozen waves. There is a heavy wooden bed raised slightly above the floor. It has thick posts at the corners, and curtains, deep fabric curtains, hang around it like a little room inside the room. Not because Eleanor wants drama, because castles are cold and curtains help hold warmth. Near the bed is a chest, a real chest, the kind you could sit on, the kind that could hold folded gowns, linens, letters, maybe a small pouch of personal items. The iron latch on the chest catches a faint glint of candlelight, then loses it again as the flame shifts. There is a chair, not a soft modern chair. A solid wooden chair with a cushion tied to it. And there is a small table. On the table, you might imagine parchment, maybe a book, maybe a small bowl with something simple, dried fruit, nuts, left from earlier. Eleanor is in this room, but she is not performing. No court audience, no formal ceremony, just the quiet end of the day. And Eleanor moves in a way that suggests she has lived long enough to stop rushing. Her movements are slow, not weak, just unhurried, like she's learned that the day can wait. Her gown is heavy fabric. You might imagine it in muted colors, because bright colors are for display, and this is private. Maybe deep blue, maybe burgundy, maybe a soft brown, stitched with a little embroidery near the cuffs. The sleeves are long. The hem brushes the floor. And when she shifts, the fabric makes a soft sound, like a slow sigh. She wears simple jewelry, a ring, a small chain. Nothing clattering, nothing loud, because even a queen at night wants comfort. Now, here's a question you can let float through your mind without trying to answer it too hard. What does it feel like to be powerful and still not be free? That's one of the quiet truths of royal history. Queens had authority, but also rules. They were watched. They were expected to behave in certain ways. And in private, when the doors close, the relief must have felt physical, like taking off tight shoes after a long day. Eleanor is near the table now. She might be writing, or she might be dictating. Sometimes queens wrote letters themselves. Sometimes they spoke and a clerk wrote. But tonight, you can imagine the simplest version. Eleanor alone, with a quill. The quill is white or pale, feathered at the end. The ink is dark, and the scratch of the quill across parchment is a soft, repeating sound. Scratch, pause. Scratch. A rhythm, almost like rain tapping a window, if you think about it. She is not writing something dramatic. Not a declaration, not a threat. Most letters are ordinary. They're instructions, they're requests, they're updates, they're reminders. Send this. Prepare that. Tell so-and-so I received the message. This is how power often looks in real life. Not a sword, not a shout, just paperwork. And the funny thing is, paperwork is timeless. If you've ever had to fill a form or answer an email, or remember to pay something before a deadline, you already understand a piece of medieval queenship. Just imagine doing it with candlelight and a feather. Eleanor pauses. She reads a line. She dips the quill again. The candle flame trembles slightly, as if reacting to her movement, and then she continues. Scratch, pause, scratch. In the background, the fire is lower now. It's not bright. It's embers. A soft orange glow, like the room is holding a small secret warmth. Outside this chamber, the castle continues to settle. Stone makes quiet noises as it cools. Wood creaks. Somewhere far away, you might hear a door close softly. And that is all. No sudden sound, no crash, just the gentle, boring background of life. This is relaxing history. This is Sleep Stories history. Now, Eleanor sets the quill down, not with a sharp tap, with a gentle touch. She might rub her fingers lightly because ink gets everywhere, and parchment can feel dry and rough. She might look at the candle, noticing how low it's burning, and then she does something that feels almost too normal to belong to a queen. She adjusts her clothing. She loosens something, a belt, a tie, a pin. Because even queens get uncomfortable, and comfort matters at night. A servant might appear, but if so, it's quiet. A soft knock, a respectful pause, and then a woman enters, one of Eleanor's attendants carrying something simple. A folded cloth, a cup, a small lamp. No dramatic announcement. No "Your Majesty" shouted across the room. Just quiet service, like the end of a day in any household. The attendant speaks softly, if she speaks at all. Eleanor nods, a small exchange. And then the attendant moves away again, leaving the room with the same quiet care. Now, if your mind wants a little suspense, we can give it the gentlest kind. because there is always a mystery in a castle at night. Not a murder mystery, not a scandal, a softer mystery. The mystery of closed doors. What is happening behind them? Who is still awake? Who is praying? Who is staring at the ceiling, thinking of tomorrow? We won't open the doors, but we can imagine them, one by one, as we drift. Eleanor's candle burns a little lower. The wax pools and drips. The shadows on the wall shift. And Eleanor begins to prepare for rest. It doesn't happen fast. Nothing happens fast in this story. She might move toward the bed curtains. She might pause to look at something small, a piece of embroidery, a folded letter, a book with a worn cover. And you might imagine for a moment that she feels a tiny ache of memory. Not dramatic sadness, just that gentle feeling of time. Like when you hear an old song and you remember a version of yourself from years ago. Queens had childhoods too, and Eleanor's childhood, sunny southern France, warm courtyards, music, feels very far from this cool stone room at night. But we won't rush back there yet. For now, we stay here, in this chamber, with candlelight, with fabric, with the slow fade of the day. And as Eleanor's evening continues in peace, you can let your own body sink deeper into rest. You don't need to remember Eleanor's dates. You don't need to memorize her titles. You can simply listen to the rhythm. Candle, shadow, breath, candle, shadow, breath. And when you're ready, we will step softly back into the corridor. Because there are other rooms, other women, other quiet lives, and the castle is full of them. Very slowly, we open the chamber door, not loudly, just enough to slip out. Then we close it again with the gentlest touch, leaving Eleanor in peace. The corridor outside feels cooler. The stone underfoot is steady, and the air smells faintly of smoke and old wood. We walk again, step by step, stone by stone. The pattern repeats. A stretch of hallway, a tapestry, a door, a faint light beneath it. And as we drift, you may start to feel your thoughts soften because the story has no sharp edges. This is history to fall asleep to. This is bedtime history. Now, somewhere ahead, there is another set of rooms, and in them, a younger queen, Isabella of France, ends her day in a world that is both royal and surprisingly small. But before we meet her, we will take our time getting there, because nothing is urgent tonight. And the castle, like a sleeping animal, simply rests around us. We continue along the corridor. The tapestries hang heavy and still. In this dim light, the scenes woven into them feel half dreamlike. Horses, hunting dogs, flowers, saints, shapes you can't quite focus on, like the edge of a dream you're about to forget. And that's okay. We pass another door, then another. Behind one might be a servant asleep. Behind another, a guard off duty. Behind another, a lady in waiting with her shoes finally off, grateful for the dark. Sometimes people think medieval life was constant excitement, but most of it was this: ending the day, finding warmth, trying to sleep. Now the corridor widens slightly. The ceiling above feels a little higher, and the air shifts. Almost like the castle is gently opening up another pocket of space. A broader candle glow spills softly into the passage from around a corner, and our footsteps echo more gently, spreading out into a wider room ahead. We turn slowly, and we arrive at a small landing where two passages meet. Here the stone feels a bit smoother, as if more people walk here in daytime. And now we drift toward a door that is not grand, not decorated, just solid, quiet, a room where Isabella of France ends her day. And here comes another contrarian thought, said softly. Isabella is famous in history for big things, but tonight we meet her in the little things, in the quiet, in the ordinary. We enter slowly, and immediately the feeling changes. Eleanor's rooms felt heavy and settled, like the end of a long life. Isabella's rooms feel more contained, more intimate, not because she's less important, but because private life often shrinks around you when you're young and watched. There is a small hearth. The fire is low, mostly embers. A faint crackle, a soft orange glow, a narrow bed, a chest, a simple chair, and on a table, letters. Always letters. Because this is medieval queenship too. Messages crossing distances, promises written down, instructions sealed in wax. Isabella is here, with her ladies nearby, but the room is quiet. If someone speaks, it's low and brief. A few words, a nod, a gentle laugh that dies quickly, like everyone remembers it's late. And if you've ever had that feeling being tired but still awake and you laugh quietly because you don't want to wake anyone, then you already understand this scene. Isabella's hair is partly unpinned, not fully loose. Medieval hair takes time, and people didn't always let it down completely, but loosened enough to ease the tension of the day. Her jewelry is simpler now, a small chain, a ring, a brooch removed and placed carefully in a box. And here is a tiny detail that makes it feel real. Every time jewelry is removed, there's a soft little sound. Metal against wood. A faint clink. The kind of sound that would feel loud if you were trying to sleep. But in this story, it's gentle. Isabella sits, and she takes up a piece of needlework. Because, yes, queens did paperwork, and queens also did sewing. They embroidered cloth, they stitched patterns. They worked slowly, stitch by stitch, because in a world without phones and screens, hands needed something to do. And needlework gave the mind something soft to rest on. Her fingers move. Thread pulls through fabric, again and again, over and over again, day after day. In the corner, a candle burns steadily. Wax pools. The flame leans slightly, as if listening. And behind the closed doors of the castle, the night continues, calm and steady. Now, if you're still awake, you might notice something. Your body might be feeling heavier. Your breathing might be slower. And your mind might be starting to drift. That's perfect. Because this is not a test. This is a long historical sleep story. A long sleep story designed to carry you gently toward rest. And we will keep going. Slowly. From room to room. From queen to queen. Until the castle itself feels like a dream you can fall into. And just when you think you know what a queen's evening looks like, we'll step into the garden paths where Margaret of Anjou finds rare calm. And later, into the candlelit study where Isabella of Castile stacks papers, one by one, as if order could be folded into the night. But for now, we stay here, with Isabella of France, with embers, with thread. with quiet breath, and you can let the details drift past you like gentle clouds. Nothing to do now, nothing to solve, only slow storytelling, only calm narration, only boring history for sleep. And if your eyes are already
closing, because the real secret lives of medieval queens, more than crowns and politics, were made of small, repetitive moments, the same way your life is. And somehow, that makes the past feel less distant and sleep feel a little easier.
And as Isabella's last stitch of the day slips through the cloth, she pauses, as if listening for something in the castle, a sound, a message, a step in the corridor. But it doesn't come, not yet. Only silence, only embers, only the long, quiet night. And we will follow that silence very slowly into the next room. We move again, very slowly, out of Isabella of France's small, warm room. Not because anything is wrong there, not because anything dramatic happens, only because the castle is large and the night is long, and there are other quiet corners where other women are doing the same simple things, ending the day, folding time into smaller pieces, letting the last warmth fade. The door closes behind us with a soft wooden sigh, and we're back in the corridor. The air here is cooler. The stone feels steadier underfoot, like it's been holding itself up for hundreds of years without complaint. A torch burns low in an iron bracket on the wall. Its flame doesn't dance wildly. It leans gently, as if the air itself is tired. Our footsteps echo, but not sharply, more like a soft reminder that we're moving. Step, and then another step, and then another. There is nothing urgent. No one is calling our name. No one is demanding attention. The castle is in its night mode now. Doors are closed, rooms are dark, and the few people still awake are moving carefully, quietly, like they're trying not to disturb the sleeping stone. We pass a tapestry, then another. In daylight, these woven scenes would be full of color and meaning. But in this dim torchlight, the colors soften into calm shapes, reds turning to brown, gold turning to shadow, green turning to a quiet blur. You might imagine a horse stitched into the fabric, but its face is hard to see. You might imagine a hunting scene, but it looks like a dream someone already forgot. And honestly, that's perfect. Because you don't need details tonight. You only need a gentle stream of images. We pass a door with iron bands across it, and another door, and another. Sometimes just under a door you can see a thin line of candlelight, a warm crack of glow against the stone floor. It's the castle's way of saying someone is still awake, but not for long. And here's a small truth that feels oddly comforting. A medieval castle at night was not truly silent. It was quietly alive. The wood creaked as it cooled. The stone shifted slightly. Somewhere in the distance, a dog might turn in its sleep and let out a small, muffled sound. A guard's boots might scrape softly as he changes his stance near an outer door. And sometimes, far away, you might hear the faint clink of a chain on a gate. Not scary, not dramatic, just normal. Just the background noise of a place that holds people. We continue. Step by step, stone by stone. And ahead, the corridor begins to change. Not suddenly, not like a surprise, only gradually, like the castle is slowly widening its ribs. The ceiling feels a little higher, the air feels more open, and then we notice something else. A scent. Herbs. Not strong, not sharp, just a faint, clean plant smell mixed with the lingering smoke of firewood, and that's when you realize we're moving toward a different part of the castle, closer to the gardens, closer to a door that leads outside, and that door belongs to a woman who, in the middle of royal expectations and heavy responsibility, sometimes finds calm by stepping into the open air. We are drifting toward Margaret of Anjou. Now, if your mind wants a bit of suspense, we can give it something gentle and safe, because Margaret's name is often connected to loud history, wars and conflict and storms of politics. But tonight, we are not following the loud version of her story. Tonight, we're going to do something that feels almost rebellious. We're going to follow her into the quiet. We're going to watch her do something ordinary. We're going to watch her do what people have always done when they need to breathe. We're going to let her walk in a garden at night, not to escape drama, not to run away from anything, just to feel the air and hear the leaves and remember that her body exists outside of titles. We reach a smaller doorway. The wood is thick, the iron latch is cold, and when it opens, it doesn't squeal loudly like in a movie. It makes a low, tired sound, like a hinge stretching after a long day. Cooler air slips in, and we step outside. The garden is not bright, not decorated like a festival. It's the garden at night, which means it has a different kind of beauty, a quiet beauty. You might imagine the path underfoot as packed earth or pale stone, slightly uneven, with little dips that hold water after rain. On either side, hedges rise in dark shapes. They're trimmed but not perfectly, because medieval perfection is not the glossy perfection you see online. It's the kind of perfection that still has dirt on its shoes. The air smells of herbs, lavender, rosemary, sage. The kind of plants people grow because they're useful, because they can be cooked with, because they can be brewed into something warm, because they can be rubbed between your fingers to release a calming scent. There may be a small fountain nearby, not a grand one, just a simple stone basin where water trickles quietly. The sound is soft, a continuous, gentle thread of noise that makes the night feel even calmer. And above, the sky is still clouded. The moon is pale behind thin gray layers. You might imagine it like someone holding a lantern behind cloth. Just enough light to see shapes, not enough to see details. The garden at night invites you to relax your eyes, to stop focusing too hard, to let things blur. Margaret of Anjou is here, and she is not rushing. She is not surrounded by cheering crowds. She is not making speeches. She is simply walking, slowly. Her cloak is pulled around her shoulders, and when she moves, the fabric makes a soft sound like a slow wave. She might be accompanied by one attendant, not a crowd, just one person nearby, at a respectful distance, quiet enough to feel almost invisible. Margaret's shoes press into the path with a gentle rhythm, step, step, step. Her breath rises in the cool air, not in a dramatic puff, just a faint, soft warmth leaving her body. And here's another contrarian thought offered gently. People imagine medieval queens as always being on, always performing, always acting like a symbol. But even symbols need to breathe. Even crowns come off. Even queens need a moment where they are not a headline. They are just a person in the night air, listening to water, noticing leaves. Margaret pauses near her bed. Maybe she bends slightly to touch a sprig of rosemary. Her fingers brush it, and the scent rises. A sharp, clean smell like waking up, except tonight it doesn't wake you. It calms you. She rubs the herb between her fingers, not because it's a plot point, because it's soothing, because it's real, because medieval life was made of these tiny physical moments. A leaf, a thread, a candle, a door latch. And then, slowly, Margaret continues along the path, past hedges, past a small stone bench, and if you want, you might imagine she sits for a moment, not for long, just long enough to rest her feet, just long enough to look at the sky. And while she sits, her mind might drift, not into political plans, not into battle strategies, but into something softer, a memory of her childhood, a river valley, a small court, a quieter place. Because even powerful people miss home. Even in a castle, the mind can travel. Margaret's face in this moment is calm but not empty. It carries a kind of quiet weight, not sadness, not anger, just responsibility. The way you might feel if you've had a long day and you're thinking about tomorrow. You're not panicking, you're not making a speech. You're just aware. And that awareness lives in the body like a gentle heaviness. She breathes in, she breathes out, and for a moment, the garden holds her. The hedges don't demand anything. The fountain doesn't ask questions. The sky doesn't judge. It simply exists. Now, you might be wondering something, and I'll ask it softly so you don't have to answer it. When was the last time you stood outside at night just to feel the air? Not to do anything, not to go anywhere, just to be. Margaret is doing that now, and you can do it too in your imagination. You can stand in this garden, in this quiet, in this sleepy history, and let your shoulders drop, let your jaw loosen, let your thoughts slow down like a candle flame that doesn't need to fight the air. After a while, no rush, Margaret rises from the bench. She adjusts her cloak. She turns back toward the castle. The herbs remain where they are. The fountain keeps trickling. The garden doesn't change. It waits, season after season, year after year, over and over again. That's another comforting thing about gardens. They are repetitive. They come back. They don't demand constant reinvention. They simply grow and then rest, and then grow again. Margaret walks back along the path. Her shoes make the same soft rhythm. Step, step, step. The castle door appears ahead, dark and solid, and when it opens, warm air brushes her face. A gentle warmth from fires inside, held by stone walls. She steps in, the door closes behind her, and the garden is left outside, quiet and breathing in the night. Inside, the corridor feels warmer than before, not hot, just less cold. The torchlight here seems softer after the garden darkness. Margaret passes servants who are finishing small tasks, someone carrying a folded cloth, someone moving a basket, someone checking a latch. Everything is done quietly, because at night, noise belongs to emergencies. And tonight is not an emergency. Tonight is routine. Margaret reaches her rooms, and now the story becomes even smaller. A private room, a narrow space of warmth. A place where a queen becomes simply a woman at the end of the day. Her attendant helps remove her cloak. The cloak is heavy. It falls with a soft, thick sound. Margaret's hair is loosened slightly, not dramatically, just enough to ease the tightness. A pin removed. A small comb passed through. And here again, you hear the tiny sounds of night time. Metal pin against wood, comb against hair, fabric folding, a candle flame faintly crackling. Margaret sits. She might take up a small book, not a thrilling book, a devotional text, a prayer book, something familiar, something she's read many times. Because familiar words can soothe the mind, even in a castle, even in history. She turns a page slowly. The paper is thick, almost stiff. The page makes a quiet sound like a dry leaf, and her eyes move across the lines, not rushing, not hunting for information, simply letting the words pass, as if the words are a soft blanket. Because Margaret, even in this quiet moment, is not truly alone. She is surrounded by a kingdom. Even behind closed doors, she can feel the world outside. Letters will arrive. Messengers will come. The next day will bring responsibilities. But tonight, she allows herself this one calm pocket of time. And as she reads, a candle burns lower. The wax pools. The flame leans, and the room grows dimmer, slowly, safely. Margaret closes the book, not with a snap. With a soft, careful motion, she sets it down. She might whisper a short prayer, not dramatic, just a simple habit. A few words repeated, night after night, and then she rises. She moves toward the bed. The curtains are thick. They hold warmth. She steps behind them. And in that moment, the queen disappears, not into mystery, into sleep, into rest, into the most ordinary human thing. As Margaret's world narrows to darkness and fabric and slow breathing, we step back out into the corridor again, quietly, carefully, leaving her to rest. We move onward, because deeper in the castle there is a light still glowing, not bright, not loud, but persistent. A candle that hasn't been pinched out yet. A room where someone is still awake, not because she's anxious, not because she's afraid, but because her mind is organized like a desk. Because her comfort comes from finishing tasks. Because she feels calmer when things are stacked neatly. We drift toward Isabella of Castile, and before we enter her study, you might notice the castle's air shift again. The herbs fade. The scent becomes more like ink and parchment. The corridor here feels quieter in a different way. Not garden quiet. Work quiet. The kind of quiet you feel in a library. We pass another tapestry. This one shows a religious scene, perhaps. a saint, a halo, a kneeling figure. But in the dim light, it's only shapes, only softness, only suggestion. And then we reach a door that has a different feeling, not heavier, not grander, just more used, as if people come and go from here often, carrying documents, carrying messages, carrying responsibilities that live on paper. The door opens and we step into Isabella's study. The study is modest but focused, not full of luxury, full of tools. There is a desk, a real working desk, heavy wood, scarred slightly by use. On it, parchment sheets lie stacked, not scattered wildly, stacked. There are ribbons, seals, small weights to keep papers from curling, an ink pot, a quill, maybe two, and a candle burning steadily beside it all. The candle's light is brighter here because the room is arranged around it. The flame makes the ink shine slightly. It makes the parchment glow warm against the darker wood. Isabella of Castile sits at this desk. Her posture is calm, not stiff, just steady. Her hands move slowly. She reads a page. She makes a small note in the margin, not a long note. A few words, a mark, a tiny correction. And here's something quietly funny if you let it be. Even in the 1400s, people had paperwork. Even in royal history, someone is always reading something boring. You can almost imagine Isabella thinking in a tired, private way. How many pages are there left? But she doesn't say it aloud. She simply continues, slowly, without hurry. Her clothing is still royal but practical, a gown with structure, a simple necklace. Her sleeves are arranged so they don't drag through ink. Her hair is neat. Her expression is composed. There is a rhythm here. Read, pause, write, pause, stack, again, over and over again, day after day. This is one of the secret lives of medieval queens that never makes it into dramatic movies. The boring part, the careful part, the part where power looks like reading and deciding and signing. Isabella takes a document and lifts it slightly. The parchment makes a faint sound. She smooths it with her palm. She presses down gently, flattening a curl. She reads again. And in the corner of the desk, you might imagine a small seal, wax that has cooled, stamped with a symbol. Wax seals were like signatures, but also like little pieces of art, a press, a symbol, a mark that says, "This has been seen, this is real, this matters." Isabella sets the document down and moves it to a new pile, not hurried, not dramatic, just neat. There are several piles, one for done, one for tomorrow, one for needs attention. And the existence of these piles is strangely comforting because it means even a queen had to manage her time. Even a queen needed categories. Even a queen couldn't do everything at once. Now Isabella pauses. She looks up. Not because someone bursts in, because her eyes are tired. She turns her head toward a narrow window. The window is small because castles and fortresses were built for protection. Through the window, she sees the night, the pale moon behind clouds, the courtyard below, a faint glow from a torch far away. And she breathes, a slow breath. Maybe she's thinking of prayer. Maybe she's thinking of tomorrow. Maybe she's thinking of nothing at all. And that, too, is part of the secret life of medieval women. They had inner worlds, and those worlds were not always recorded. History records big decisions, but it doesn't always record the moment someone stared out a window and simply existed. Isabella turns back to the desk. She lifts her quill. She dips it into ink. She writes a few more words. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. And then, at last, she sets the quill down. She stacks the final paper. She straightens the pile. She presses it gently, as if tucking it in. And now, the closing ritual begins. Not a ceremony, a practical routine. Isabella gathers ribbons. She places seals carefully in a small box. She covers the ink pot because ink spills, and even queens don't want ink stains. She rolls up a map, not fully, just enough to make it manageable. She ties it gently with a strip of cloth. Then she stands, and here is one of the quietest, most satisfying moments of the night. The moment when work is done, not because the world is solved, but because the day has ended. Isabella reaches for the candle. She pinches the flame. It goes out. The room becomes darker, not frightening, just softer. She lights a small hand lamp instead, maybe. A contained flame, a safer glow for walking, and she steps toward the door. The door opens. The corridor outside greets her with cool stone air. Her footsteps echo softly. Step, step, step. And as she walks away, the study rests. The papers rest. The desk rests. The objects of work become still. It's almost like the room itself sighs, because it doesn't have to hold decisions right now. It can simply be a dark room full of sleeping objects. We follow Isabella into the corridor for a few moments. She turns down a passage that leads toward private chambers, and then, gently, we let her go too, because queens need rest. And because this is boring history for sleep, we are not here to crowd anyone. We are here to drift. Now, we do something very calming. We zoom out. We imagine the entire castle again. The great hall, quiet. The corridors, dim. The closed doors, the sleeping rooms. 4 different women in 4 different spaces, each ending her day in her own way. Eleanor in candlelit chambers, the quill set down, the curtains drawn. Isabella of France, with embers fading and a last stitch pulled through cloth. Margaret, returning from the garden, cloak folded, book closed, bed curtains pulled shut. Isabella of Castile, desk cleared, candle extinguished, corridor footsteps fading. 4 different lives, 4 different corners of medieval history, but all turning toward the same thing. Night, rest, silence. The secret lives aren't secrets because someone hid them like treasure. They're secrets because they were too ordinary for chroniclers to care about, too soft, too repetitive, too human. But those ordinary moments are the ones that can help you sleep, because they have rhythm, because they have calm detail, because nothing explodes, nothing screams, nothing demands attention. Only candlelight, only stone, only fabric, only breath. Now, we begin to walk again, back into the castle's long corridors. This is where the story becomes more like a dream, because we're going to stretch time. We're going to let the building itself become the main character. We're going to let the castle's night routine carry you, step by step, stone by stone, door by door, and we will drift toward the great hall again, where the last warmth is fading. Somewhere inside the castle, a long, quiet corridor stretches ahead. The day is over now. Most doors are closed. Most rooms are dark. We walk slowly, unhurried, with nothing to do and nowhere we need to be. The floor is made of smooth, worn stone, block slightly uneven, shaped by countless footsteps over many years. On the walls, heavy tapestries hang in long, still folds. In this dim light, their colors are muted, almost faded into one soft pattern. Shadows from torches drift slowly across the fabric, changing shapes gently, with no rush at all. Again and again, along the corridor, another tapestry, another door, another patch of stone, another soft pool of light. And as we follow the corridor a little farther, the space around us begins to change. The ceiling above feels slightly higher, the walls a little farther apart. Our footsteps echo more gently now, spreading out into a wider room ahead. A broader, warmer light spills softly into the passage from around a corner. The air grows more open, more spacious. Step by unhurried step, the narrow hallway loosens and finally opens into the great hall of the castle, a vast room that has at last settled into rest. The great hall is quieter now than when we first entered. The tables are still there, long and heavy, but they feel more distant, like sleeping animals in the dark. The benches are pushed in. The rushes on the floor lie still. The hearth fire is lower, almost entirely embers, and the air holds that faint smell of smoke mixed with old wood and the quiet warmth that stone keeps for a long time. Where there was noise earlier, there is now only calm. Where there were voices earlier, there is now only the soft crackle of embers. And if you listen closely, you might hear a sound that feels almost like breathing. Not the breathing of a person, the breathing of a building, the way a castle settles into the night, the way wood cools, the way stone holds warmth, the way silence becomes thick, like a blanket. Now we drift along the edge of the great hall, not fast, not with purpose, just wandering. And as we wander, we notice details. A goblet left upside down on a table, forgotten until morning. A folded cloth on a bench. A candle stub burned down to a short, tired shape. A shadow moving gently across a tapestry as the last ember light flickers. And here, you might feel your own mind doing what this hall is doing, settling, cooling, letting the day leave, letting the night deepen. And this is the part of bedtime stories for adults that matters most. Not the information, not the facts, but the feeling. The feeling of being somewhere calm, somewhere safe, somewhere slow. The feeling that nothing is demanded of you. The feeling that you can drift. Now, as we stand at the far end of the great hall, we might notice a smaller doorway leading away, toward the kitchens, toward the workspaces. And this is another part of medieval castle life people imagine as loud and busy. But at night, even the kitchens sleep. So we move toward them, quietly, step by step. The kitchen area is dim, not dark, because there might be one small lamp, one low flame, but dim enough that edges blur, dim enough that the world feels soft. The great cooking hearth is banked. The fire is covered with ash to keep embers alive for morning. Large pots sit with lids on them. Wooden bowls are stacked. Knives are put away. Everything is done. The room smells faintly of food, bread, onion, herbs, smoke, not strong, just a lingering memory of meals. And somewhere in this warmish corner, a cat has found a spot, curled up, tail wrapped, sleeping with the confidence of a creature who knows the castle will still be here tomorrow. That cat is possibly the wisest creature in the entire Middle Ages, because it does not worry about politics, it does not worry about messages, it does not worry about titles. It simply finds warmth and sleeps. A servant might pass through quietly checking something, but even that is gentle. A soft step, a quiet breath, and then gone. The kitchen waits for morning. Waiting is a big part of medieval life. Waiting for dawn, waiting for food to bake, waiting for water to heat, waiting for messages to arrive, waiting for seasons to change, and waiting can be soothing when nothing is urgent. Now we move onward again, toward an outer door, toward the courtyard, toward the open air, because after wandering inside, it can feel calming to step outside once more and feel the night. The courtyard at night is still. The stone underfoot is colder now. The air is sharper. A guard stands somewhere near the wall, but he is quiet. He may be leaning slightly. He may be thinking of his bed. A torch burns near the gate, its flame making the shadows of iron bars stretch and shrink. Above, the walls rise, solid, protective, holding the castle like a shell. And beyond the walls, the world exists too, a distant town, a few scattered lights, a far-off sound that could be a cart or could be the wind. And here, under the sky, you can feel time in a different way, because the sky doesn't care who is queen, the moon doesn't bow, the clouds don't flatter. The night simply covers everything equally. Queens, servants, guards, animals, stone, wood, all under the same dark cloth. And maybe that is part of why this is comforting, because it makes life feel simpler. It reduces everything to breath and warmth and rest. Now we drift back inside, because the night is long and we have more quiet to explore. And as we move, we begin to revisit the queens again, but in an even softer way. Less biography, less detail, more atmosphere, because the deeper you go into sleep, the less you want new information. You want repetition. You want familiarity. You want the same gentle shapes again and again. So we return, briefly, softly, like checking on sleeping rooms. First, Eleanor's chamber. We do not enter loudly. We slip in like candlelight. The room is mostly dark now. The fire is out, or nearly out. One candle might still be burning, very low, its flame small and steady. The bed curtains are closed. Behind them, Eleanor sleeps. We do not see her clearly. We do not need to. We only notice the stillness, the folded fabric on a chair, the quill resting on the desk, the ink pot covered, the chest closed. The room is a collection of objects at rest, and the air feels warm in a faint way, like the last breath of a fire, again and again, day after day. This room has seen night, and it will see night again. Next, Isabella of France. Her hearth is embers now, not flame, just glow. The book is closed, the needlework set aside, the room is quiet, the shadows are soft, and the embers make a gentle orange pulse, like a sleeping heartbeat. Nothing to decide now, nothing to solve, only the slow fading of the day. Next, Margaret. Her window might be cracked open just slightly, not wide, just enough to let in a breath of night air, and with it, a faint scent of herbs from the garden. Rosemary, lavender, sage. The garden waits outside, but for now, the night belongs to rest. And Margaret rests too, behind curtains, behind quiet. Next, Isabella of Castile. Her desk is cleared, papers stacked, seals cooling in a box. The candle is out. The room is dark, work has been folded away, and the corridor outside is calm. Step by step, stone by stone, everything moving towards sleep. Now we zoom out again. 4 rooms, 4 lives, 1 castle, sleeping, resting, breathing. And at this point in the story, you may barely be listening. Your mind might drift in and out. That's perfect. That's what a 2-hour sleep story is for. A gentle stream, a calm presence, a sleepy background. Now, we return to the castle itself, because the castle can lull you like a lullaby if you let it. We begin another corridor walk, slowly, repetitively, safely, and we let the building carry us onward toward deeper sleep. Step and step and step, light, then shadow, door, then wall, tapestry, then stone, again, over and over again, day after day, night after night, and as you drift, you don't need to remember any of this. You can let it dissolve. Like candle smoke, like a dream you don't need to keep, just breathe. Let your body feel heavy, let your mind float. And if you're still awake, just know this: we're going to keep walking these halls. We're going to keep revisiting these quiet rooms. We're going to keep circling the great hall, the kitchens, the courtyard, the tapestries, the doors. And each time we return, it will feel more familiar, more repetitive, more boring, more soothing, because this is boring history for sleep. And the more boring it gets, the easier it becomes to let go. Now, very softly, very slowly, step by step, stone by stone, down another quiet passage where the torchlight looks tired and the shadows seem to stretch and yawn along the wall. And if you've been half listening, half dreaming, that's exactly right. This is history for sleep, not history for homework. You don't need to track the plot. You don't need to keep up. If your thoughts drift away for a while and then drift back, that's fine. That's what boring history for sleep is for. Now, as we walk, you might imagine the corridor narrowing again. Not tight, just close enough that you feel the stone near you. And there's something oddly soothing about that, isn't there? Like the world gets smaller, like your responsibilities can't fit in this hallway, like your worries have to wait outside politely until morning. We pass another door, and another. Some are tall with iron bands like ribs. Some are smaller with simple latches. And each door has its own tiny personality. One has scratches near the bottom, perhaps from a dog. Another has a slightly crooked hinge that makes a soft, familiar sound whenever it opens. Another has a little carved mark near the handle, someone's old habit, someone's quiet signature. And here is a small joke, whispered gently so it doesn't wake you. If medieval castles had customer reviews, half of them would be about the doors. Beautiful view, great tapestries, would visit again. But the door latch is loud at night. You can almost imagine a sleepy servant muttering about it. But tonight, nobody mutters loudly. Tonight, everyone is careful. The castle is resting. And we are too. Now, somewhere ahead, there's a staircase. Not grand. Not the kind of staircase where people make dramatic entrances. Just a simple flight of stone steps that turns once. Like the castle is gently curling in on itself. We descend slowly. One step, and then another. And the sound of each footfall becomes softer as we go down, because the air changes. Cooler, still, a faint scent of ash lingering from fires above. And as we reach the lower level, the corridor feels older. Not because it is truly older, though it might be, but because it's quieter. And quiet places always feel older. Quiet makes time feel heavy. Now, you may notice something else. The castle is not one temperature. That's another tiny truth of medieval history. Different rooms feel different. Near the Great Hall, there is warmth. Near the kitchens, there is lingering heat. In corridors far from fires, the air is cold enough to make you want to pull your sleeves over your hands. And if you've ever walked through your house at night and felt one room warmer than another, you already understand this. The medieval world was not some alien place. It was just humans managing comfort with fewer tools. Now we continue our slow tour, because this is also part of the secret lives of medieval queens, the places around them, the building itself, the way the castle shapes routine, the way it forces life to move in certain paths, the way it becomes a world inside walls. And very gently, the castle begins to guide us toward morning. Not fast, not suddenly, but with tiny hints. Because even in a sleep story, time moves. Even in a bedtime story for adults, the castle eventually breathes toward dawn. So, without waking the mood, we begin imagining the rhythm of a medieval castle at the very start of a new day. Still quiet, still slow, still boring. Perfect. The castle before sunrise. The sky outside is still dark, but not fully black. It's the kind of dark that has a soft edge, a deep blue, a gray that's beginning to lighten. The stars are fading, and the moon looks paler, like it's been awake too long. Inside, most people are still asleep, but a few are already moving. Not nobles, not queens. The first ones awake are usually the workers, people who keep the castle alive. A servant might rise from a narrow bed in a small room. The floor is cold, so the first thing they do is find shoes or wrap cloth around their feet. They pull on a wool layer, not fancy, just warm. They tie it, they fix it, and they step into the corridor quietly, because the castle is still sleeping. You might imagine the servant carrying a small lamp, the flame protected by glass or metal so it doesn't flicker out. Their steps are careful, soft. They don't rush, but they do have purpose. Because fires need to be lit again. Water needs to be carried. Shutters need to be opened. And this is something that can feel strangely comforting if you're lying in bed right now. Someone, somewhere, has always been doing the boring work of mourning, over and over again, day after day, even in castles, even in royal history. The servant walks toward the kitchen hearth, and the hearth is not a roaring fire at this time. It's ash and embers, quiet, sleeping. So the servant kneels. They blow gently, not dramatic, just enough to wake the embers. A faint orange glow appears again, like a sleepy eye opening. Then more wood is added, small pieces first, then larger. And slowly, very slowly, the fire returns, not as an explosion, as a gradual warmth, as a patient flame. And while that happens, another servant might be doing something else, carrying water. In a castle, water is work. It's carried in buckets, from a well, from a stream, from wherever the castle can get it. And if you've ever carried a heavy bag of groceries and thought, why did I buy so much? Then you already understand medieval waterwork. A servant walks carefully, bucket in hand, trying not to spill. The water sloshes quietly, a slow sound, a soft rhythm, and the stone floor is cold underfoot. In a far corridor, shutters are still closed. Windows are small and narrow, but they have wooden shutters, and someone will open them. Not quickly. They unhook a latch. They push the wood outward, and cold air enters the room, carrying the faint smell of wet earth, leaves, and morning. Light creeps in. Not bright light, just the earliest, softest hint. And the room changes. A room with a closed shutter feels like a box. A room with an open shutter feels like breathing. Now, somewhere above, a bell might ring. Not loud, not shocking. A calm bell. A routine bell. A bell that says, the day has begun. And that bell is not for drama, it's for rhythm. Because medieval life runs on rhythm, on repeated actions, on schedule, on habit. And habit is one of the quiet engines of boring history to sleep. Now, we begin to imagine one particular part of castle life, the way queens begin their day. Not with servants fanning them like in a fantasy movie, not with a sudden "Your Majesty," but with cold air, stone walls, and the very human fact that waking up is annoying for everyone, even royalty. A queen wakes in a stone chamber. The bed curtains hold warmth, but once you step out, the chill reminds you immediately. Castles are cold, so the queen does not leap out of bed like an athlete. She rises slowly. She sits for a moment. She breathes, and one attendant might enter quietly, already dressed and ready. She brings a basin of water, not steaming hot, warmish if you're lucky, and the queen washes her face. A simple act, cold water on skin. A small shock, yes, but not dramatic. Just a reminder that you are awake. The queen's hair is combed, not fast. Hair takes time, braids, pins, simple structure, and then the clothing begins. This is one of the most boring parts of medieval queenship, and honestly one of the most fascinating because it's so physical. Layers, first linen, a shift, soft against skin, then more layers, wool for warmth, then a gown, then perhaps a surcoat, then maybe a belt. And there are ties and laces and pins, so many pins. If you ever want to feel grateful for modern clothing, just imagine having to be pinned together every day. And you can smile softly at that thought, because it's true. A queen is dressed by others, not because she is helpless, because the clothing is complicated, because it takes hands, because it is, in a way, architecture made of fabric. And while she is dressed, the room is quiet, no dramatic speeches, just the sound of cloth moving, the soft whisper of wool, the faint clink of a brooch, a pin set in place, a ribbon tied, over and over again, day after day. Now, after dressing, there is usually prayer, because medieval royal life is soaked in religion. Whether it felt comforting or heavy depends on the person. But the routine is there, so the queen may go to a small chapel, or pray in her own chamber, or walk quietly to a larger chapel for morning mass. And we can picture that chapel now, slowly. The chapel is dim, candles burn. Not many, but enough. Their flames are steady. The stone is cold. The floor might be covered with rushes, or there might be simple mats. A priest murmurs Latin, quietly. The words are like a low hum, not meant to entertain, meant to repeat, meant to settle the mind. And the scent of incense hangs in the air, a soft smoke that curls and lingers. Now, if you're listening right now and thinking, this is so slow, that's perfect. Because slow is the point. This is sleepy history. This is calm storytelling. This is history to fall asleep to. And in the chapel, the queen kneels. The gown folds around her. Her hands might rest together. And for a moment, the queen is not a political figure. She is not a symbol. She is simply a person, kneeling on cold stone like many others. Now, after prayer, there is the great hall again. Not for drama, for food. Breakfast is not a feast. It is simple. Bread, cheese, maybe porridge, maybe fruit when available. And watered wine is common because water is risky in many places and times. This is also a reminder. Medieval life is not romantic in the modern sense. It is practical. It is about survival and routine. And sometimes that practicality is exactly what makes it soothing, because it's honest. Now we can imagine the great hall in morning light. The tables are not empty now, not full, but used. Servants move quietly, a loaf is placed, a cup is filled, a plate is set down, wood against wood, soft sounds, no clatter. The queen sits, not necessarily on a giant throne, sometimes a chair on a raised platform, yes, but it's still a seat. And she eats, slowly, because the day ahead is long. Now, here comes a gentle question for you. Have you ever had a morning where you sat with food, but your mind was already racing into the day? Queens had that too, because after breakfast there are audiences, petitions, meetings, letters, and we can describe that in the calmest way possible. A steward enters with a small stack of documents. A messenger bows. Someone asks a question. The queen nods. A decision is made, not shouted, just spoken. A quiet yes, a quiet no, a quiet later. And those small decisions shape households, shape budgets, shape lives. That's power in its most boring form. Now, when we talk about secret lives of medieval queens, people expect secrets like romance, betrayal, hidden daggers. But the secret is often this: they were managers. They ran households like businesses. They supervised clothing, food, staff, schedules. They handled charity. They handled ceremonies. They handled reputation. They handled endless expectations. When you see queens this way, history feels closer, less like a distant myth, more like real life in different clothes. And that closeness can make your mind feel calmer because it stops trying to solve history and just starts watching it. Now, we let the morning drift into afternoon, not with excitement, with repetition. The queen might spend time with ladies in waiting. There might be sewing, embroidery, reading prayers, a walk in a garden when weather allows, and even reading might mean being read to, because not everyone read easily, but stories existed. Texts existed, words existed, they just moved more slowly. And the Queen's Day continues, over and over again, day after day. Now, we let the afternoon soften toward evening, torches lit, the air cooling, dinner served. A meal not always dramatic. Sometimes there is music, yes, a harp, a soft song, but it's not a concert. It's a background, a gentle hum of life. And then, nighttime returns. Candles, curtains, quiet rooms. And we are back where we began. That's the rhythm of castle life. And rhythm, repeated, is one of the strongest tools for sleep. Now, with the castle's routine built gently in your mind, we can drift back toward our queens again. But this time, we go deeper into one of them, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Not into war, not into scandal, into her early life, into warm courtyards, into fountains, into the part of her story that feels almost like the opposite of a cold stone castle at night. And we do it slowly. We begin Eleanor's childhood in Aquitaine. You might imagine the air warmer here, softer, not the damp chill of northern castles, but a mild warmth that makes stone feel less harsh. There are courtyards with open sky. There are fountains, water catching sunlight. There is the sound of voices, not shouting, just life. And here is a quiet contrast that matters. Eleanor's early world is full of movement, music, poetry, language. Aquitaine was known for culture, for troubadours, singers and poets who performed. And if you imagine that softly, like hearing music from another room while you're half asleep, it becomes soothing rather than stimulating. Eleanor learns, not with a rush, with repetition. A tutor speaks, she repeats. Letters on parchment, words in Latin perhaps, or in the languages around her. She learns manners, she learns how to sit, how to stand, how to greet, how to listen. And yes, that is boring, that's the point. Because the secret of greatness is often training, and training is repetitive. Over and over again, day after day. Now one day, Eleanor inherits lands, a huge amount of land. And this is one of those moments that could be presented like drama, like a sudden twist. But in real life, inheritance often feels like paperwork and serious faces. Advisors come, maps are laid out, letters arrive, seals pressed into wax. And Eleanor, still young, has to sit with adults who speak in careful voices. They talk about boundaries, about duties, about marriage. Because in medieval royal history, marriage is not just romance, it is politics, it is strategy, it is alliance. And yes, that sounds heavy, but we will keep it soft. We will keep it distant. We'll treat it like weather, present, but not crashing over us. So Eleanor's marriage is arranged. She becomes betrothed to Louis. And now the journey begins. And travel in medieval times is one of the most repetitive, soothing rhythms you can imagine. Because travel is slow. It's not a quick flight. It's days of the same thing: horses, carts, roads, meals, sleep again and again and again. Eleanor travels, her belongings travel, chests packed with cloth and personal items, servants walking, riding, carrying, guards, advisors, a long line moving through the landscape. You might imagine the road as muddy in places, dry in others. The sound of hooves, the squeak of a cartwheel, and the sky changing slowly overhead. Clouds moving, light shifting, time passing. And at night, the group stops. An inn, a guest hall, a monastery, a place with walls, a place with a fire, a place where people eat bread, drink something warm, and then sleep. It's repetitive. It's boring. It's perfect for a sleep story. Eleanor arrives at the French court, and here, the air changes again. Maybe it is colder, more formal, more structured, different customs, different food, different expectations. Eleanor learns the new rhythm. She listens. She observes, she adjusts, because even queens have to adapt. And adaptation is quiet work, not a dramatic speech. 1,000 small choices: how to greet, what to wear, when to speak, when to stay silent. Now, you might expect the story to rush into big events, but we will not. We linger in ordinary court life. We linger in candlelit evenings. We linger in the sound of fabric. We linger in the soft motion of daily routines. Eleanor sits at a table. Someone brings parchment, letters, a map. She looks at it. She listens to a low voice reading something. She nods. She makes a small comment. And then, later, she walks to a chapel. Candlelight, Latin murmurs, incense smoke. The same shape of faith, repeated across Europe, day after day. Now, as Eleanor's life continues, there are travels, pilgrimages, long journeys, and here is the gentle suspense we can offer. Because whenever you travel long enough, something changes in you. Not loudly, quietly. The road repeats itself so much that your mind begins to drift. And that drifting is where people think, where they feel, where they become. Eleanor rides. The horse's movement is steady, up and down, a rhythm, a lullaby. And the landscape passes slowly. Fields, trees, villages, a river, a bridge, the same scenes repeating with small changes over and over again, day after day. And at night, there are tents sometimes, or guest halls, or castle rooms that aren't hers. Always the same routine. Cloak off, shoes off, hands washed, hair loosened, a prayer, a candle, sleep. It is almost funny how similar life is across time. Different furniture, same human. Eleanor is moving through the world learning to be a queen in a new environment, but she is also learning something else. She is learning what it feels like to carry a title that people use as a leash, not just a crown, a leash, because medieval queens were often praised and controlled at the same time. They were celebrated and limited at the same time. And Eleanor, smart, capable, alive, will eventually push against that. Not with a sword, with presence, with choices, with endurance. But we won't rush there yet. We'll keep walking the road. We'll keep hearing the cartwheel squeak. We'll keep watching candle flames lean in the wind. We'll keep sinking into boring detail. Because this is boring history for sleep, and our job is not to excite your brain. Our job is to gently carry it. Now, as Eleanor's travel rhythm continues, we allow time to soften again. We let decades pass the way they pass in sleepy storytelling, not with a loud announcement, but with the quiet turning of seasons. Winter, frost on windows, breath visible in cold air. Then spring, herbs pushing up, flowers opening. Then summer, warm nights. Then autumn, harvest smells, smoke in the air. And again, over and over again, day after day. Now we zoom out briefly, across Europe, across kingdoms, across centuries. This rhythm repeats. Castles wake, castles sleep, queens rise, dress, pray, listen, manage, rest. And if you've been listening to this as anxiety relief sleep, you may notice something. The repetition is calming. The predictability is calming. The lack of surprise is calming. Because your brain, tired as it is, doesn't need novelty right now. It needs safe familiarity. Now, we drift back to the castle at night again. Because the night is our home in this bedtime history. And as we drift, we return to the corridor walk, our quiet thread. Step by step, stone by stone, door by door, and we allow the castle to become even more dreamlike. Somewhere inside the castle, the corridor stretches again. The torchlight is lower now. The shadows are longer. The tapestries hang still. The doors remain closed. Again and again along the hall. Stone floor, soft echo, patch of light, patch of shadow. And as you move through this corridor in your imagination, you can let your thoughts become less sharp, less focused. Like looking at a painting without trying to interpret it, just seeing shapes, just seeing light, just seeing texture. You pass another door. You imagine behind it a small room with a narrow bed, a servant asleep, breathing slowly. You pass another door. Behind it, a guard off duty, boots removed, shoulders finally relaxed. You pass another door. Behind it, a lady in waiting, hair loosened, hands folded over her chest. And then, perhaps behind another door, a queen. Not dramatic, just human, because it reminds you, you are not alone in being tired. You are not alone in wanting rest. Even the most important people in history had to lie down, close their eyes, and hope sleep came. Now the corridor widens again. The ceiling lifts slightly. The air opens, and you feel that gentle shift that signals you are nearing a larger space. But we don't arrive loudly. We drift. We let it happen slowly. And at last, the corridor opens once more into the great hall. The tables are silent. The hearth is embers. The room is resting. And for a few moments, we simply stand in that stillness. The kind of stillness that makes you breathe slower. The kind of stillness that makes your eyelids heavy. And now, very softly, we begin a midway hook, not shouted, not exciting, but comforting. Because if you're still awake right now, you might be thinking, how long is this going to go on? Long. It's going to go on long enough for your mind to stop fighting, long enough for your nervous system to accept the calm, long enough for the story to become background. This is a long sleep story, a 2-hour sleep story, a slow, gentle river of sleepy history. So you don't need to hold on. You can let go. And if you wake later and catch a different part, that's fine too. It will still be calm. It will still be boring. It will still be history for sleep. Now we keep going. We keep drifting. We keep walking. We keep returning to quiet rooms and quiet objects. We keep letting candles burn down one by one. We keep letting the castle settle. And we keep letting you sink deeper and deeper and deeper. Nothing to do now. Nothing to solve. Only calm storytelling, only gentle narration, only the quiet secret lives of medieval queens made of ordinary things. And as the last ember in this great hall flickers softly, we begin to move again, toward another chapter of the night, toward another set of rooms, toward another gentle, boring repetition that will carry you onward, step and step and step. We keep going. Not fast, not in a straight line, because castles are not straight lines, and sleepy stories are not straight lines either. They curve, they circle back, they repeat themselves. And repetition, when you're tired, can feel like a hand on your shoulder saying, "It's okay, you don't have to do anything right now." So we walk, step, and then step, and then step. The stone underfoot is cool, the torchlight is faint, and the castle feels like it's listening in that quiet way old buildings seem to have. Now, if your mind is still awake enough to be curious, you might wonder, how did medieval queens actually live? Not in the dramatic way, not the movie queen way, but the real way. And the answer most of the time is almost boring enough to be funny. They lived by schedules, by rituals, by repeated routines, by people telling them what was expected, by layers of fabric, by letters, by prayers, by food served at certain times, by doors opening and closing, by candlelight and cold stone, and yes, by boredom, which is perfect, because tonight we are doing boring history for sleep. Now, we drift through another corridor and we find ourselves in a quieter pocket of the castle, where the walls feel thicker and the air feels stiller. This area doesn't smell like the kitchens. It doesn't smell like herbs. It smells like old wood and dust and linen, the kind of smell you find in a closet you haven't opened in a while. The kind of smell that tells you time has been stored here. And this is where we find something that history books rarely mention, but which matters deeply in real life. Storage, chests, linen, cloth. Because in medieval life, clothing isn't just clothing, it's warmth, it's status, it's protection, it's money. And if you think I'm joking, imagine this. A queen's wardrobe could be worth more than a small village, not because it was fashion, because fabric was labor, fabric was time, fabric was expensive. So, a queen's world includes not just gowns, but the entire quiet industry behind them. And tonight, we can visit that industry in the most boring way possible. We slip into a storeroom, not a dramatic secret room, just a room with shelves, chests, and folded things. There's a large wooden chest with a heavy lid. The lid is smooth from hands opening and closing it over years. There are bundles of linen folded in stacks, white or pale, faintly yellowed with age. There are rolls of cloth, wool, maybe silk in a smaller chest. And there's a scent of dried lavender tucked between fabric layers, because people learned early that herbs help keep insects away. A servant stands here quietly, holding a lamp. They lift one folded piece. They check it. They fold it again, over and over again, day after day. And yes, it is boring, but it's also calming, because it gives your mind something simple to picture. Fold, smooth, stack, again. Now imagine a queen's gown not as a wow moment, but as a practical object. It has seams, it has wear, it has places where stitching was repaired. Because even in royal history, things are fixed and reused. A gown might be altered, a sleeve might be changed, a new trim might be added. And this is another contrarian thought, whispered gently. Medieval luxury was not endless consumption, it was careful management. It was making things last. It was treating objects like they mattered. And that, in its own way, is comforting, because it makes the past feel less shiny, less unreachable, more real. Now we drift out of the storeroom again and back into the corridor. And as we walk, we begin to sense something, a small shift in mood. Not fear, not drama, just a different kind of quiet, like we're approaching a place where the castle's silence feels deeper. And you might ask yourself, without needing to answer, what part of a castle would feel like the quietest place? A chapel, perhaps. A place where candles burn for reasons other than light. A place where people whisper instead of speak. So we move toward the chapel again. The chapel door is smaller than the great hall door, not because faith is less important. Because chapels don't need to be wide, they need to be contained. They need to hold stillness. We open the door, and the air inside is cooler and cleaner, like stone that hasn't been warmed by cooking fires. A faint scent of incense lingers even hours after prayer. Candles burn in small clusters. The flames are steady, protected from drafts. The light is soft. It doesn't bounce strongly off stone. It sits gently on it. A few benches line the walls, not comfortable, not padded, just wood. And the floor is stone, smooth from years of kneeling. Now, here's the funny thing. Many medieval people spent a lot of time in chapels. And that means medieval chapels heard a lot of the same thing over and over again. The same prayers, the same murmured words, the same requests, the same thanks. And it's easy to imagine the stone itself absorbing it all like rain soaking into ground. A chapel is like the castle's quiet heart, a place where worries are brought and left. Now, you might imagine one queen here, not performing, not surrounded by ceremony, just one person in the dim light. It could be Eleanor. It could be Isabella of France. It could be Margaret. It could be Isabella of Castile. And because this is a sleep story, we don't need to decide. We simply imagine the shape. A woman kneeling, hands together, head slightly bowed. The rustle of fabric as she shifts her knees on cold stone. The slow breath. The candlelight. And in her mind, perhaps a simple thought. Not a political thought, a human thought. Please let tomorrow go smoothly. Please keep my children safe. Please give me strength. Or maybe, honestly, please let me sleep. Because yes, even queens might have prayed for sleep. Now, we do something very gentle and very sleepy. We let the chapel fade, not with a dramatic cut, with a slow drift. We step out again into the corridor. and the corridor receives us like a quiet riverbank. Torchlight, tapestries, doors, soft echo. And as we walk, we begin sliding forward in time, not too far, just enough to prepare for our next queen focus later. Because we have introduced Eleanor's early world, but we haven't yet fully settled into Isabella of France's childhood. And that's a perfect place for a calm curiosity. Because Isabella's childhood is often described in big historical terms: France, diplomacy, royal court. But the secret lives of medieval queens begin with small things. So we will go there, slowly. Imagine Isabella of France as a child in the French royal court, not as a political weapon, not as a future queen used for alliance, just as a child waking in a room that smells of clean linen and candle wax. Her chamber is warmer than a peasant hut, yes, but it is still stone. It is still cold in winter. It is still drafty. Even royal comfort has limits. She wakes in bed. She sits up slowly. She pushes back blankets. An attendant enters quietly, not with shouting, with routine. A basin is brought. Her face is washed. Her hair is combed. And here's a detail you might like to imagine, because it's so ordinary. A child's hair gets tangled, even royal hair, even princess hair, even hair destined for crowns. So there is gentle pulling, a little wince, a quiet, patient voice saying, "Hold still." And Isabella, like any child, tries to be patient, and sometimes fails. And that is comforting because it reminds you history's important people were once kids who didn't want their hair brushed. Now, Isabella's education begins early, not in a classroom with bright posters, but with tutors, with religious instruction, with etiquette. How to sit, how to speak, how to greet, how to walk slowly and gracefully even when you want to run. And here's another contrarian thought. A royal childhood might look luxurious, but it can also feel like training for a job you didn't choose. Imagine knowing your life will be watched. Imagine knowing your marriage will be arranged. Imagine knowing you are valuable because of your bloodline, not because of your personality. That's a quiet pressure. And pressure can show up in small moments, like a child trying to sit perfectly still, like a child being told to smile when tired, like a child learning to lower her eyes at the right time. So Isabella grows up in a world of ritual. Music might be heard in corridors, a harp, a soft song, not pop music obviously, nothing catchy and annoying that gets stuck in your brain at 2 a.m., more like a low background hum. And there is embroidery. Women and girls often learned needlework, not as a hobby, as a skill. So Isabella sits with cloth and thread, tiny stitches, again and again, over and over again, day after day. And if you want to picture it, imagine the thread pulling through fabric like a tiny river, sliding through a tight space. Pull, then pull again. The cloth tightens. The pattern slowly emerges. And this slow emergence is part of why needlework can be calming, because you don't get instant results. You get gradual progress, and gradual progress is less stressful. Now, Isabella's court life includes prayer, always prayer, chapels, candles, Latin. She learns the rhythm of Mass. She learns when to kneel, when to stand, when to bow her head. And the priest's voice becomes a kind of background sound, steady, low, repeating. A sleep tool, honestly. Now, as Isabella grows, she begins to be prepared for something big. But again, we don't treat it like a cinematic moment. We treat it like paperwork and whispers. The adults around her begin to talk differently. Letters arrive. There are quiet conversations behind doors. And Isabella might not know every detail, but she can feel the shift. Like how you can feel the mood in a room even when nobody explains it. And then, one day, someone says it plainly. You will go to England. You will marry. And even if Isabella is trained to be calm, that moment lands in the body, not as a scream, as a heaviness, as a slow understanding. And here comes the gentle suspense. Because now, the road begins again. A long journey, a sea crossing, a new land, a new language, a new cold. But we will not rush into it. We will pack slowly. Because packing in medieval times is its own boring ritual. Chests, cloth, jewelry, books, religious items, letters, small personal objects, and each object placed in a chest is like a little piece of a life being folded away. And that can feel emotional, not dramatic emotional, soft emotional, like leaving home, like moving, like the quiet ache of change. Isabella touches something small, perhaps a carved box, perhaps a familiar book, and she places it in a chest. The lid closes, and that sound, that simple wooden sound, is like a door closing on childhood. Now we drift gently into the journey, and the journey begins with horses and roads. But soon it reaches the sea. So let's imagine the sea crossing very slowly. The ship is not a luxury cruise ship. It is wood, rope, sailcloth. It smells of salt and damp. The boards underfoot are uneven. They creak. The air is cold. The wind is stronger than in a courtyard. And Isabella, wrapped in a cloak, stands or sits near the sheltered part of the deck. Waves move beneath, not huge, not terrifying, just steady motion, up and down, and up and down, like rocking, like a cradle. And this is one of the strangest things. The sea, which can be frightening, can also be soothing if it's calm, because it repeats, because it moves in rhythm, because it doesn't demand anything from you except to be carried. The ropes creak softly, the sail flaps lightly, then settles. Someone speaks in low voices. The crew knows what they're doing. Isabella's attendants stay close. The ship continues, and the coastline fades behind, and ahead, another coastline waits. England. Now, Isabella reaches England, and the first thing she notices is the cold. Not, I'm going to die cold, just a damp, sharp chill that seeps into fabric. English castles are often darker than French palaces, more enclosed, more damp. The halls feel heavy, the stone feels wet in the air, and Isabella's life becomes a new routine, new customs, new food, new expectations. And here is the quiet, emotional truth. Even when you arrive surrounded by people, you can feel lonely. Because nobody speaks your inner language, because nobody knows your habits yet, because everything familiar is gone. So Isabella builds a small private world, a chair she likes, a small chest with personal objects, a book she reads again and again, needlework, prayer, quiet conversation with one trusted person. These are the little survival tools of medieval women, and of humans in general, honestly. Now, if your mind is still awake enough to wonder, you might ask, why does this matter? Why do we care about these boring details? Because the boring details are where you find reality, and reality is comforting, because it reminds you that life has always been made of small things, not just big headlines, not just big drama, small repeated acts, washing your face, eating bread, walking down a corridor, lighting a candle, folding cloth, breathing. And when you focus on those, your nervous system calms down because your brain stops scanning for danger and starts noticing patterns, and patterns feel safe. Now, we do what sleepy stories do. We soften the edges, we stop adding too many new facts, and we return to pure castle ambience again. Because by now, you might be drifting, so we give you something easy. A corridor, a tapestry, a door, a torch. Repeat. Somewhere inside the castle, we are walking again. The corridor is long, the floor is stone, the walls are lined with heavy fabric. The torchlight makes everything look soft. We walk slowly, without hurry, with plenty of time, and in the quiet, you might hear your own breath. In and out. You might hear the faint crackle of a torch. You might hear a distant step, but nothing else. Door, wall, tapestry, stone, again, over and over again. And as we walk, we pass a small side passage. It leads to something different. Not a room, not a bedchamber, a narrow space where servants might keep keys. Yes, keys, because medieval castles are full of locked things. Chests locked, doors locked, cabinets locked, and keys are heavy, iron objects that clink softly when moved. A servant might hold a ring of keys. The ring is metal, the keys are long and dark, and when they move, they make a small sound, clink, clink. And the funny part is, keys in castles are like keys today. Someone always knows where they are and someone always loses them. You can almost imagine an attendant whispering, "Where did you put the key?" And another whispering back, "I thought you had it." And then both of them trying not to panic because it's late and everyone is sleeping. But tonight, in our story, nobody panics. The keys remain where they are. The castle remains calm. Now, we drift onward, and we begin to move toward another queen's childhood, Margaret of Anjou. Because Margaret's early life is quieter than her later reputation, and we want the quiet. We want the river valleys. We want the smaller court. We want the soft, slow scenes. Imagine Margaret as a girl in Anjou. The landscape is different. There are river valleys, gentle hills. The air smells of water and grass. The court is smaller, less heavy, less towering. Still structured, yes, but not as intimidating as the English royal machine. Margaret learns the same things: prayer, etiquette, needlework, language. She learns to hold her posture. She learns to speak carefully. She learns that words matter because people listen. And she learns quietly that her life will not belong fully to her because marriage arrangements begin long before the wedding. Letters are written. Negotiations happen between adults, and a young woman is prepared like a piece in a game. That sounds harsh, but we keep it soft. We keep it distant. We focus on the routine, a dress being fitted, a cloak being sewn, a trousseau being assembled, clothing, linens, objects to bring to a new home. And again, packing becomes symbolic. A chest opens, cloth is folded, a ribbon is tied, the lid closes. A life is being moved. Now Margaret leaves home. She travels, and travel becomes a lullaby again. Horses, carts, stops at guest halls, meals of bread and stew, candles at night, and then England, a colder land, a different language, a different kind of castle. Margaret arrives as a young queen, and her routine becomes heavier, not because she's weak, because the expectations are heavy. She learns names, she learns who matters, she learns who smiles sincerely and who smiles like a mask. She learns to hold herself steady, and she finds calm where she can, sometimes in gardens, sometimes in prayer, sometimes in quiet conversations, sometimes simply by sitting near a fire and letting her hands rest. Now, Margaret's later life includes storms in the kingdom, but we keep storms far away. We describe them like distant thunder. You hear it, you know it exists, but you remain inside, warm, safe, watching candlelight. So Margaret manages her household. She checks ledgers. Yes, ledgers. Again, paperwork. Again, the secret life of queens as managers. She speaks with stewards. She listens to advisors. She makes choices. And she also does something deeply human. She worries about her child. She prays for her child. She thinks of her child at night when the castle is quiet. And if you've ever cared about someone and felt that quiet worry in your chest, you understand that part of Margaret's life better than you realize. Now, we do not sit too long in worry. We shift back to routine, because routine is the soothing blanket. We return to Margaret in the garden again, but this time we make it even quieter. The garden is a darker shape now. The fountain trickles. A leaf stirs in the breeze. Margaret walks slowly. Her cloak is wrapped around her shoulders. Her steps are unhurried. She pauses near herbs. She rubs rosemary between her fingers again. The scent rises, clean, sharp, calming. She breathes in, she breathes out, and she does not solve the kingdom tonight. She does not fight battles tonight. She simply exists in the night air, and that is enough. She turns back toward the castle. She steps inside. The door closes softly, and her day ends like any other day ends. Shoes off, cloak folded, hair loosened, prayer whispered, candle lowered, sleep over and over again, day after day. Now we drift again toward Isabella of Castile, because Isabella's quiet power is in discipline, in routine, in the steady repetition of prayer and governance, and we can picture it again, even more softly this time. Isabella's study is dark now. The candle is out. The desk rests, the papers are stacked, the seals are cooling. The quill is still. The room is full of sleeping objects. And that idea, sleeping objects, might sound strange, but it's a soothing way to think. Because it means everything can rest. Not just people. Wood rests, stone rests, cloth rests, even ink rests. Nothing needs to happen right now. Now we zoom out again, the whole castle, sleeping. And then, slowly, we begin a long corridor loop. Because corridor loops are hypnotic. They are the perfect deep sleep hum. So we walk, step, 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 stone floor, tapestry, door, soft light beneath it. Torch crackle, shadow drift, again, over and over again. And as we do this, we also gently begin preparing for one more queen focus later, Isabella of Castile's childhood and devotion. But we will not fully go there yet. We will just hint. Because hints keep curiosity alive without waking you. So here is the hint. Far south, in Spain, in the high plateaus of Castile, a young girl kneels in a quiet chapel. Candles burn. The air smells of wax and stone. Her hands are folded. Her mind is focused. She is learning discipline, one slow day at a time, and that discipline will become her strength. But tonight, we do not rush to history's big outcomes. We remain with the candlelight. We remain with the quiet. Now we continue walking. And something changes, not outside, inside you. Your listening becomes softer. Your thoughts become slower. Your body feels heavier. This is the part where the story stops being information and becomes atmosphere. So we lean into atmosphere. We describe objects, quiet objects, simple objects. Because simple objects don't wake your brain, they calm it. Imagine a candle, a plain candle. It stands in a metal holder. The wax is pale. The flame is small. The flame leans slightly to one side. It crackles faintly. Wax drips down the side in slow lines. The wax pools at the base. The room is dim. The candle makes a small circle of light. In that circle of light, you can see the edge of a wooden table. The table is scratched, used. In the shadow beyond, you can see the outline of a chair, and the air is still. Now imagine a piece of fabric, a folded gown, a cloak. It lies on a chest. The fabric holds the shape of folds. It smells faintly of smoke and herbs. It is heavy. It rests. Now imagine a quill, a feather. It lies on a desk. Ink has dried on its tip. It rests. Now imagine a closed book. Thick pages, worn cover. It rests. And as you imagine these objects resting, you might feel a little more permission to rest too. Because nothing is asking you to move. Nothing is asking you to respond. Nothing is asking you to solve. Now we return one more time to the Great Hall. Because it's our anchor space, our familiar room, our visual library. And we enter it again, softly. The great hall is dim. The hearth is embers. The tables are silent. The benches are still. The rushes lie flat. The tapestries hang heavy. Shadows drift. The air smells faintly of smoke. The warmth is gentle, lingering, and somewhere high above, the ceiling beams vanish into darkness. You can't see everything. You don't need to. Your mind can relax its focus. And this is another funny thing. In modern life, we are always forced to focus. Screens, notifications, messages, deadlines. But in the Great Hall at night, nothing demands focus. The hall is content to be partially seen. It doesn't care if you notice every detail. It simply exists. Now we drift along the hall and we hear something faint. Not loud, not scary, just a distant bell. Maybe from the chapel tower. Maybe from a nearby church beyond the walls. A soft ring. A reminder that time is passing. But not a stressful reminder. A calm one. The night is moving forward. Slowly. Safely. Now we step away from the hall again, into another corridor. And we do something new, but also boring. We visit a queen's bath preparation. Not a modern bath, obviously. Not bubbles and scented candles and relaxing music playlists. A medieval bath is effort. It's water carried in buckets. It's a wooden tub brought into a room. It's cloths and basins, but it's still soothing because it's about warmth and care. So imagine this. A queen is preparing for sleep. An attendant brings a basin of warm water. Not hot. Warm. Steam rises faintly. The queen dips her hands. She washes her face. She wipes her neck. She loosens the feeling of the day. Another cloth is brought. Clean linen, soft. The queen's jewelry is removed. Ring placed in a box, chain laid carefully, a brooch set down, clink, soft clink. Hair is combed again, slowly, patiently. And here's another small humor moment. If medieval queens had one modern wish, it might not be more power. It might be a fast way to get ready for bed. Because everything takes time. Everything is layered. Everything is pinned. Everything is unpinned. And you can imagine the quiet relief when the last pin is removed. When the hair is loosened. When the gown is replaced with a simple shift. When the body finally feels free. That feeling of release is universal, and you can borrow it. Let your shoulders drop. Let your face soften. Let your hands relax. Now the queen steps toward the bed, curtains drawn, warm pocket of fabric, and she disappears into sleep. Not into history's dramatic pages, into ordinary rest. Now we do another gentle trick. We pull back and we look at the castle from the outside again. Because zooming out can be soothing. It makes life feel smaller. It makes your worries feel less close. So we stand outside the castle again. Night air, clouded moon, stone walls rising, a torch at the gate, a guard quiet on duty. And inside those walls, hundreds of small routines are happening. Some done. Some still finishing, some asleep already. And the castle, like a giant animal curled up, rests. Now if you're still awake and your mind wants one more little thread of curiosity, I'll give it to you gently. Because each queen we've met is famous for something loud. Eleanor is famous for power and movement across kingdoms. Isabella of France is famous for political storms. Margaret of Anjou is famous for conflict in England. Isabella of Castile is famous for huge historical changes. But tonight, the contrarian perspective is this. What if their most important moments weren't loud? What if their real endurance was built in the quiet, in the daily repetition, in the ability to keep showing up in a cold room with a heavy gown and do the next small task. That kind of strength doesn't look heroic in a movie, but it is heroic in real life. Because when you notice that kind of strength, you start seeing your own life differently. Your own small routines, your own boring persistence, your own ability to keep going, and then you can rest. Because you don't need to prove anything tonight. Now, we return to a deep sleep loop. Less new material, more repetition, more familiar imagery. This is where the story becomes a soft blanket. We walk through the corridor again, stone underfoot, tapestries along the wall, torchlight low, doors closed, again, over and over again. A patch of light under a door, a soft shadow moving on fabric, a quiet echo of steps. We pass the staircase. We descend a few steps, 1, 2, 3, each step slow, each step steady. We reach the lower corridor, cooler air, stillness. We pass a closed door, behind it, a sleeping servant. We pass another. Behind it, a sleeping guard. We pass another. Behind it, folded cloth on a chair, waiting for morning. We pass another. Behind it, a queen asleep behind the bed curtains. We do not enter. We do not disturb. We simply pass. And the castle remains calm. Now we drift into the great hall again. The hearth is embers, the tables are silent, the rushes lie flat, the tapestries hang still. The air smells faintly of smoke and old wood. Nothing moves much, nothing demands attention, only candlelight and shadow. Now we drift toward the kitchens again, covered pots, stacked bowls, a banked hearth, a cat curled in warmth, sleeping. We drift toward the courtyard again, cool air, a torch at the gate, a guard standing quietly, the sky clouded, the moon pale, and we drift back inside again. Because the castle is our safe place tonight. Now, very softly, we revisit each queen one more time, but like a dream. Less detail, more feeling. Eleanor asleep in a dark room with one low candle. Isabella of France. Embers fading, cloth folded, silence thick. Margaret of Anjou. Herb scent drifting in through a cracked window. Garden quiet outside. Isabella of Castile. Desk cleared, ink covered, papers stacked, room dark. 4 rooms, 4 lives. 1 castle, 1 night, and you listening, breathing, letting go. Now, I'll say something gently that might make you smile. If you're still awake at this point, congratulations, you're stubborn, but in a good way. Your mind is strong. It likes to stay alert. It likes to make sure everything is okay. And tonight, you can tell it softly. Everything is okay. The castle is safe. The doors are closed. The torches are low. The queens are asleep. The servants are asleep. The cat is asleep. You can sleep too. Nothing to do now. Nothing to solve. Only the slow passing of night. Only boring history. Only quiet, gentle storytelling. And as the candle flame leans and shrinks, and the embers cool, and the stone holds the last warmth of the day, you drift deeper and deeper and deeper, step by step, breath by breath, over and over again, day after day, night after night. until the story becomes a soft blur and sleep arrives quietly, like a cloak settling over your shoulders. The castle grows quieter now, as if it's finally exhaling. The torches burn low, the corridors soften into shadow, and behind closed doors the queens rest. Eleanor in her candlelit chamber, Isabella with embers fading, Margaret with the faint memory of herbs on the night air, and Isabella of Castile with papers stacked and work put away. Nothing is urgent. Nothing needs fixing. You don't need to remember a single detail. Let the stone walls, the slow footsteps, and the gentle hush of medieval life drift past like a dream. Breathe slowly, and let yourself sink into sleep.